Hello, my name is Julie Parks, and I am the Manager of Education and Outreach for US Figure Skating's Skate Safe department. Today, we're going to talk about mandatory reporting, and I ask that you give this topic your attention for the next 15 minutes or so. Like a good emergency safety plan, my hope is you never have to use this information, but it's certainly helpful to be informed and prepared. So diving right in, how are you a mandatory reporter? All US figure skating adult participants are required by both US Figure Skating and the US Center for Safe Sport to report any suspected child abuse and/or sexual misconduct to law enforcement and the center. Another way you are a mandatory reporter, all US figure skating participants are expected to report any physical or emotional misconduct to the Skate Safe team, and any US figure skating participant who willfully tolerates, which means does not report misconduct, can be reported as well. So next we can look into when to make a report. And there are three primary ways when you would make a report. The first is you suspect abuse or misconduct. So that's when you think you saw something or you heard something, perhaps overhearing two people talking about it. That is a suspicion of abuse or misconduct. Secondly, if you discover abuse or misconduct, so you saw something either live or in a video, or someone specifically told you something, that is discovering abuse. And third is someone discloses abuse or misconduct to you. And that is when this is a first person party who is sharing information with you about something that happened to them. And that specific situation can be uncomfortable. So I want to share, if this happens to you, three ways that you can best handle that situation. The first is try your best to stay calm and listen to what the person is saying to you. Secondly, try not to interrogate, make promises, or try to problem solve the situation. Again, going back to number one, please do your best to stay calm and listen to what they're saying. And third, when it comes to the actual report, you want to focus on the what, when, where, and who of what they're saying. If one of those pieces is missing in what they are sharing with you, it is okay to ask them for that specific detail. So these are the three primary times when you make a report. Going a little bit further into that, I want to differentiate between bad faith and false allegations. Bad faith reporting is when the reporter intentionally and knowingly lies about misconduct, whereas a false allegation is when a report is made and the investigator comes to find out through their search that misconduct did not occur. False allegations can sometimes happen, but bad faith reporting should never happen. We want all reports to be in good faith based off of information that was truly shared with you. If you're not familiar, I want to share the bystander effect. And that is when a group of people may witness the same thing and each person assumes that somebody else is going to take action and therefore nobody takes action. So as a mandatory reporter, everyone has an individual responsibility to report an event that they witnessed, heard, or where it was disclosed to them. Please don't ask or expect somebody else to make a report for you. And each reporter may include a unique perspective or relevant piece of information. So if 3 people witness an event occurring, then that should be 3 separate reports that are being made. And this last piece, which I personally think can be the hardest, is removing your personal opinions when you are making a report. Perhaps you hear something and you think, well, I know that person and they would never do such a thing. That can be really challenging to then make a report for somebody. So I do encourage you, please try to remove your personal opinions in those scenarios. Another situation where you may have a personal opinion attached is thinking, well, this situation doesn't seem like that big of a deal and I don't want to waste anyone's time. Again, that's a personal opinion. Make the report based off the facts that you have, and understand too that sometimes addressing situations early on can prevent continual and or worse behavior down the line. So you know how and you know when, But where do you make a report? So the first topic of sexual misconduct and/or child abuse should be reported to the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, local law enforcement, and possibly Child Protective Services. I will come back and touch on that. It is important to note here that it's local law enforcement where the incident took place, not where anyone is from or not where a home rink is located. Next, if it's physical and/or emotional misconduct, which can include but not exclusive of bullying, hazing, harassment, stalking, that would come directly to the U.S. Figure Skating Skate Safe team. And third, perhaps you might have an interaction of unhealthy or unprofessional behaviors that might not necessarily be a skate safe violation, but you know it's not good for the community or for the sport. Then you would go to your LOC Skate Safe chair. They should have codes of conduct in place for various situations, and they can have more control over these types of scenarios. It's worth noting there's a lot of information on this page. If you're not sure, send it to the Skate Safe team. We'll make sure that it gets into the right hands and that it's being addressed and investigated properly. I want to note here that childwelfare.gov is a great resource that you can look into, and there will have a load of information about your specific state and different regulations. And the reason I point this out is when you are making a report to local law enforcement, if it does involve child abuse, some states, local law enforcement is required to then forward that report to Child Protective Services. And in other states, local law enforcement is not required to forward that report. So you can look at childwelfare.gov for that information. You can also ask local law enforcement directly when you call and make that report. Ask them if they are going to be contacting Child Protective Services. And if they are not, then you would be responsible to call them, contact them, make that report as well. I also want to state here, if you are an official, please be aware that mentioning misconduct in your official's report does not satisfy your mandatory reporting responsibility. Please follow these guidelines that are laid out here to make sure all instances of misconduct are being brought to the folks who are responsible for the investigation. And again, if you are unsure, overwhelmed, upset, come to us. We can file a report together and help you through the process. We do not expect everyone to be experts in this situation, and we certainly want to be a reliable resource that you can lean on if ever dealing with making a report. So a few notable items besides what I have already mentioned that I want to make sure is included in this education. Gossip is serious. When it comes to mandatory reporting, casual comments can have serious outcomes. You don't know who is overhearing, repeating, or retaliating because of something you said. Also, if you hear something, even if it's gossip, you must report it and every report will be investigated. I want to point that out so everyone can please be responsible with your words. Another item is anonymous reporting. We don't encourage anonymous reporting because most times when a report comes in, either to the U.S. Center for Safe Sport or the Skate Safe team, there are usually follow-up questions that need to be asked. And if we don't have your contact information, there's only so much we can do. However, we understand that sometimes people are adamant to remain anonymous. And with that being said, an anonymous report is better than no report. If you do make an anonymous report, please keep a copy of the report for yourself in case you need to prove your involvement as a mandatory reporter at some time down the road, and you cannot be accused of willful toleration if you don't have that report on hand. Another item that I know people can ask questions about, I certainly was curious about myself, response and resolution confidentiality. And I want to note here, reported information of both the reporter and alleged victims are kept confidential on a need-to-know basis. I know that is a vague phrase, but it's good for you to understand the identities of those involved are not available to people outside of the process. And taking that a step further when it comes to conflict of interest. If there is any conflict for those who would be involved with the investigation, that person would be removed from the case. And if it extends to a place where it truly is too close of a conflict for the team to impartially investigate, we would then forward that report to the Center for Safe Sport, and they would take jurisdiction of the case. So again, these are points that are worth being made so you understand there is confidentiality, there is impartiality when these reports are being investigated. And the last piece here for a notable item is retaliation is unacceptable misconduct too. So if you make a report and you feel you are being retaliated against, or know someone else who is being retaliated against who is involved with an investigation, that is a separate and reportable offense as well, even if the person who is doing the retaliation was not even involved in the first report. So notable items that I'd like you to just be aware of when it comes to mandatory reporting. So I want to share some resources. I appreciate your time as you've been giving this webinar your attention. And I will ask you at this point to take out your phone because there are a few items that I do think would be helpful for you to add to have at your fingertips if ever needed. The first is when it comes to reporting. If you are in a situation where you will be making a report to the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, you can either do that through this website, safesport.i-site.com/portal, or you can call them 833-5US-SAFE. Those are two acceptable ways to make a report to the U.S. Center for Safe Sport. If you're going to be making a report to U.S. Figure Skating and the Skate Safe team, I encourage you to take a picture of that QR code right now. That will take you directly to the Skate Safe reporting form. You can bookmark that, favorite that, just so you have it at your fingertips if you ever need it. Additionally, if you ever need to contact us with any questions, you can email us at skatesafe@usfigureskating.org, or you can reach us through the US Figure Skating's main phone line at 719-635-5200. And then another resource that I would like you to have access to is if you need help, and it's twofold. You might need some of this information if you're ever involved in a situation where you may need help, or if you're in a situation where someone's disclosing information to you. And of course, you are not expected to be an expert of how to help somebody dealing with a potentially traumatic event. And this would be another reason for you to have these resources available at your fingertips so you can share it with somebody else. All three of these resources are free and available 24/7. And again, I encourage you to enter some of this information into your phone, because if you are ever in a scenario where you truly need access to this content and this information, I don't expect you to think back to this very moment and remember everything that's listed on this slide right here. So if you have it at your fingertips in your phone, then it is something that you can pass along and share either with somebody else or utilize it for yourself. Again, like I mentioned before, it's best to be prepared, have it available, and hopefully you never need it. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time watching this webinar. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at skatesafe@usfigureskating.org. And I do encourage you to skate safe. Bye-bye.